Thank you all for signing on. This is the second session that we've run ever on our Welcome to Rotary series, and I suspect it's not going to be the last. The point of these sessions is really just to give you a very relaxed, short, sharp introduction to Rotary and how Rotary, particularly in Western Australia, operates now and what the opportunities are. It's going to be fairly short. There'll be opportunities to ask questions certainly at the end. And I suspect you're not going to remember everything. So perhaps just focus on, the melody rather than the individual notes. And if you do have any questions later, feel free to email them through to me. You'll get my contact details because I'll send you an email after this session with some events that are upcoming. So before we get into it, I thought I might just start by sharing how I got into Rotary. And it started in school when my friend and I, in fact, my sister went on Rotary Exchange to Canada and she had an amazing time. And I thought, oh, wow, that's something that I want to be part of. And in the end, about a week before applications closed, my friend and I put we applied for the exchange program. We got picked up by a couple of clubs and accepted, and he got flown off to France and I got flown off to a tiny little country town in the Pacific Northwest of the USA called Sequim, just across the border from Victoria on Vancouver Island. And was there for 12 months and had an absolutely amazing time. It was similar culture in that they spoke English, but it was well out of our comfort zone, and certainly before the days of internet and FaceTime. So having that distance from my family at that time in my life was quite a pivotal point for me. So during my year, I got introduced to Rotary and we participated in a lot of community projects, and it became I realised how important Rotary was in that town and all of the amazing work that they do. So when I left, I knew that I would one day be a Rotarian and do the kind of work that these people were doing. So but I did think it might have been, when I'm semi-retired, retired, a few less hairs or a few more grey hairs on my head. So I was quite surprised in 2010 when someone tapped me on the shoulder and said, why don't you come and join this new club that's being set up called Crawley? And they had a really innovative vision for the club. And so I jumped on that, helped set the club up and rotated through all the leadership roles, experienced everything I could possibly experience. And then realised that I still had a burning desire to help the Rotary organisation and ended up helping out at the committee level from a district point of view. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. In the end, we started to set up Rotary clubs, and I hopped off the committee to set up a club in Perth called Elizabeth Key Rotary. And that's now 5 years old and doing really well and growing. And there's a whole new generation of Rotarians in there that wouldn't have known about Rotary had we not had these kind of experiences. And then shortly after, got back on the committee, and now myself and a few of the people on the call today help manage Rotary in Western Australia. And the key point being we're doing other things like helping Rotary clubs maintain their members, setting up new Rotary clubs, and I'm in the midst of setting one up now for participants who went through a leadership program called RILA. The club is specifically for those type of people in early days, but it gives you a bit of a thrill being able to set something like that up. So that's about me. The rest of this is going to be about Rotary, and then, of course, if you like at the end, about what you're seeking to achieve and how we might be able to connect those dots. But it wouldn't be a Rotary presentation if I didn't start with how it all began. And very briefly, Paul Harris is a very well-known name in Rotary circles, and in 1905 he started the first Rotary club in Chicago. And essentially, like any Rotary club starts, it was a group of people who wanted to make a difference, and they were rotating around, hence the Rotary, to different businesses or their boardrooms to talk about business and helping each other, but then also talking about what kind of difference they could make in the community. And from that one club in Chicago, it has now stretched out to about 34,000 different Rotary clubs and over 1.4 million Rotarians around the world. So he's a pretty amazing guy, Paul Harris. So where we sit now, Rotary is very popular in USA, Canada, and I guess the developed world. What we're seeing, though, is a bit of a boom in Rotary in places like India and the Philippines, which is fantastic, and that could be the future of Rotary. You can see now that there's more clubs in Asia than there are in the USA, Canada, and the Caribbean, which is quite amazing. But Rotary is non-religious, non-political, and in fact, it's somewhat frowned upon if people in Rotary start being involved in those areas and using Rotary for those type of purposes. We aim to be as welcoming and as diverse as possible, and that means including people of all professions, all ages, genders, and abilities. Now, that wasn't always the case. Likewise, with a lot of things in the world, it started off being all male. But over the years, Rotary has caught up with the rest of the world. And I think most people who knew Rotary 30 years ago are very, very surprised about what some contemporary clubs could look like now. So really, we focus on solving real problems. And I guess every Rotarian subscribes to the motto of service above self. And what that means is, subscribing to something that's bigger than you, to helping other people and, giving back. A lot of the Rotarians I know get into it because they've lived a pretty fortunate life, and now they see that they have an opportunity to actually make a difference to people who might not necessarily have such a fortunate life. So the structure in WA, totally, there's about just over 80 clubs in the state. We're going through a process now which is merging the two leadership structures, which we call districts, into one. So by 2023, we'll have one governing structure over Western Australia, which will help manage and administer all 80 clubs. So Rotary is done at a club level, and each club is very different. I'll talk about that later too. Within the district, there's lots of opportunities to get involved as well. As I said earlier, myself and some of the members on this call are on the district leadership team. We also have the leader of the district from 1st of July this year signing on as well, Iniki. So there's a whole range of opportunity, leadership opportunities, as well as different ways to make a difference, not only at the club level, but also the broader Rotary organisation. Likewise at Rotary International. So we've got the district. Sitting above that is Rotary International, which is really the main organisation that people recognise when we talk about Rotary. And what that does is it supports clubs by coordinating big programs and grants and other things. The Rotary Foundation sits alongside that, and that helps fund humanitarian activities from local service projects to big global initiatives. So a little bit more on the foundation. It's something that most Rotarians hold very dear because of the impact that it makes and how it's set up. So lots of Rotarians contribute to that, and even part of the membership fees go towards the foundation. And over the years, they've been able to direct more than $4 billion into life-changing sustainable projects. And they've done it in a way that has been really sustainable. And when independent auditors review the Rotary Foundation, it always comes up as one of the highest, in fact, if not the highest, one of the highest ratings possible out of all the charities in terms of the impact that it makes, but also how it manages costs. So it's quite an amazing organisation, foundation, in terms of the impact that it can make to the world. So, it could be anything from, supporting volunteer doctors to help refugees in Germany, or supporting relief efforts, during cyclones or tornadoes in Puerto Rico. or even something as simple as installing a few hundred solar lights in remote communities in Central America or the US, in fact. So whatever it does, whatever the foundation does, in fact, a lot of what Rotary does falls into these 7 areas of focus. That's not to say that Rotary at a club level doesn't have the freedom and flexibility to do the kind of activity or give the kind of impact that the club members want. But you could almost pigeonhole a lot of the impact into these 7 areas. So that's promoting peace, and they can do that through funding major scholarships, fighting disease, saving mothers and children, supporting education, protecting the environment, clean water and sanitation, and then investing in developing communities. But around the world, the collective efforts of the 34,000 odd clubs go towards making a difference in areas like this. The great thing is also, I'm not sure if I'm going to get to this, but the collaboration that can happen. So sometimes you'll see a Perth-based Rotary club collaborating with a club in India or a club in Philippines and jointly working on something to make a difference in their community. So not only is collaboration at a local level, it's also at an international level. So globally, you might have heard some of these things because they've been quite significant. But the End Polio Now campaign really reaching the real pointy end where polio has been eradicated in 99.99% of the world, and it's just got a tiny little bit to go in some really hard to get places before we can really say that polio has been eradicated completely. And it wouldn't have happened without Rotary's impact. It also wouldn't have happened without the collaboration that we've had with major donors, such as the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation as well. We've also set up several Rotary Peace Centres around the world to help fund and support students to go through to make a bigger difference at a national level and a political level. And of course, the disaster response efforts. So most recently in Perth, there's been bushfires, but there's been other things throughout the years which Rotary has really rallied behind that have made a real difference to people. Such as the Joe Wheatley All Abilities Play Space. So at a local level, that's the collaboration between a few different Rotary clubs, at Rotary West as well. And they've created this amazing play area for children with disabilities, and not just disabilities, children in general. My son has gone there several times. It's quite epic. He's 5, by the way. He's not a teenager, but it's amazing, inclusive area that is pretty unrivaled. But it costs a lot of money, and without Rotary really spearheading this project, it just wouldn't happen. If you're around the Dalkeith area, it's right on the foreshore. So have a look at that one day if you're ever in the area. An older project called Bud Blank. So Rotary Perth really got behind that in its early days and has made a significant difference to people around the world. And of course, in Australia, I should say. And some lesser known examples is the UWA Medical School. Again, a Rotary initiative to set that up quite a while ago. And just to think of the impact that how many doctors have actually passed through that and are now saving lives, not only in Australia, but also externally. You can't quantify that. The impact has been significant. So partnerships are a really important part of Rotary. So whether it's with helping to lead the Global Polio Initiative, with not only the Gates, but also World Health Organization, partnering with UNICEF or the Vaccine Alliance, partnering with Shelterbox during Hurricane Katrina and other things, particularly in the US or Central America, where these things really devastate communities because of the density of the populations there, and also the economic landscape there as well. And also with UNICEF to help water and sanitisation in schools to prevent diseases. There's also other collaborations around that at a local level and also international level with Toastmasters. So one thing Rotary does is it does want to help members make a difference in the world, but we also try and make a difference to our members. So having learning and collaborations with groups like Toastmasters for our own professional development. The list goes on, and we'd still be here at 7 o'clock past to continue, but it's basically the major organisations in the world. Rotary doesn't try and replace them or replicate them. They really try and partner with them and support them to make a difference. I might just talk a little bit about the membership experience, and the reality is it just depends on the club and the members of the club to determine the type of membership experience it wants to give its members. So what I try and encourage clubs to do is to really define who they want as members and then build every aspect of their club around that, around the types of projects their members want to get involved in, the way they communicate, the way they interact. We're sitting at home now in our pajamas, but some clubs love to get a meal at a local venue and have that FaceTime. So some like a mix of that. So it really depends on each club in terms of the experience that you're going to get. There's some clubs that have been around for 60 years and perhaps they haven't changed much in that 60 years and they love it. There's other clubs who have been around 60 years and you wouldn't recognise them today because they're a different club than they were back then, and they've kept up with the changes in the community and the world. There's other clubs that have been set up really recently that are very tech-focused and appreciate that younger members are really busy and they want to engage on the level that they can rather than be feeling guilty about not being able to participate when life gets really busy or overwhelming. Some clubs are predominantly retirees. Some clubs are predominantly, 20 to 30-year-olds. Some are in the city. Some are up in Wanneroo or as far down as Mandurah. In fact, even in the regions. So it can vary greatly, as can the projects that a club may take on. However, what won't change is that sense of friendship and the sense of making an impact, as well as the ability for someone new to Rotary who's really passionate about a particular cause. If they're passionate and they want to help lead it, clubs will get behind that and do whatever they can to create a vehicle to make a difference. But I guess what I try and encourage people to do is not lose focus on the bigger picture of Rotary. Rotary is really important at a club level, but it's pretty amazing above the club level as well, particularly at an international level. And we've got members here in Western Australia who have sat as a director on the Rotary Foundation and are currently on the committee, on a Rotary International committee. So it's pretty amazing the opportunities that you can get through Rotary. So likewise, through membership, there's also Rotary programs that Rotarians, but others can also be involved in. And, that varies, so varied, but there's peace fellowships and community corps and youth exchanges and service exchanges. There's so many different, opportunities in Rotary that, bear with me, you really just have to dig a bit deeper to understand. What I try and encourage people to do is go around to a couple of clubs, see the experience. I can help, or the membership committee can help guide you, but on which clubs to go visit. But if you're interested in Rotary, the best thing to do is actually experience a couple of different types of Rotary clubs. So you really get a bit of a fit for who the members are that you'll be becoming friends with, what type of projects they do and what their style is. There's also other organisations that aren't specifically Rotary clubs, but they're very much connected with Rotary, and that is Rotaract, and traditionally that's a bit of a bridge to Rotary for younger people, and Interact, and likewise that's sometimes people's first introduction to Rotary. That's for kids of school age to get involved in community service and giving back from a really young age. now's the time for question. But before I do that, I wanted to come back and actually just talk about an experience that I had through Rotary. And then I'm going to ask two other people to share their experience. So one of my best Rotary moments was when I was in Australia, the ability to connect with projects overseas. So back in, I think, about 2014, I went on I connected with the organisation called RORCS, which is essentially a way to govern international projects and funding from a tax deductibility purpose. But what I was able to do is to support those projects which were located in Africa. And during my travels in Africa, I stopped off in 3 or 4 different projects that we ended up supporting and volunteering at. The first one was an orphanage in Uganda, and it was an AIDS orphanage. So the kids had lost both parents to AIDS. And that was just a really humbling experience. But we even us being there was just such a great experience for the kids. But we planted a tree. We hung out with the kids. My wife is a dance teacher, so she, was able to do exercises with the kids, and it really was an amazing opportunity. They had a project where if you raised money, they would buy cows and they would then sell all chickens, and the eggs and the milk of those cows or chickens would then fund that orphanage. So that was pretty amazing. The next place we went was Kenya, and we went into the Korogocho slum, and they had a media centre that someone from Perth had set up. And it was amazing. The kids there took us for a tour around. We got to meet the community. We got to support the media centre. And again, that just a Rotary project making a difference in a slum in one of the second biggest slum in Nairobi. From there, we headed north and we went to a place called Sanchat, which was it was a school in Gilgil. And again, this one was really impoverished. And again, we did classes and we just really spent time with the kids, and also the owner of that school. And then finally, we went all the way up to Nakuru and went to a big slum there. The name escapes me, but basically what happened in Nakuru, there was a bit of a genocide there was a civil war essentially and genocide. And there was a lot of displaced people, a lot of people with AIDS, a lot of kids without parents. So basically a woman from Perth had set up a school there and was feeding the kids one good meal a day. So we went to the school, supported it, bought food for the kids, bought food for some of the community. And I'll never, ever forget one of the family that we were visiting. There was a woman who had AIDS and she was breastfeeding a 2-year-old child, and she'd run out of milk and she probably had months to live. And I just felt so bad for those kids who had 6 or 7 siblings. But I knew that with that project there, those kids were going to be looked after one way or the other. So it's tragic, some of the circumstances, but some of the impact that people are making around the world is just truly inspirational and life-changing for myself, having experienced that. So what I might do is cross over now to Kero. And Kero, can you just share, you had an interesting experience a couple of weekends ago with a project. Can you give us a little bit of insight into that?
I sure can. Just by a little bit of background, I'm in one of those innovative clubs in Rotary where we do all of our business online via Zoom and Facebook, and we get together socially, face-to-face. But we had this special project out in the wheat belt, about 300 k's east of Perth, it's based in a little town called Bruce Rock. And we have a couple of local district high schools, a couple of very small schools, 200 odd kids in total. And for the last 8 years, we've been running a thing called the Swim for Reading, which has been modestly successful. But this year, we got both communities really involved in it. And whereas we'd have an average of, say, 35 swimmers before, this year we had 83. And the communities got right into it, had real fun. It was on a 41-degree day. And where typically they might raise $5,000 for their schools, this year they raised nearly 12. So everybody's really happy. And as a spin-off from this thing, the kids who work for their schools to fundraise by swimming get to go to a really fantastic Rotary Youth Leadership Exchange for teenagers. Leadership development program called RIPEN for teenagers. And all that happened on Saturday, and everybody was on top of the world. So that's one aspect of Rotary that I really love. And the very next day, in that very same place, a bushfire storm took hold and 60 kilometre-an-hour winds, 44-degree temperatures. It burnt out 30,000 hectares in no time, and it really devastated the community. So this is where the thing that James talked about before, called RORCs, our RORCs is our in-house tax deductible grant subsidising program for helping communities in need, just like Bruce Rock as a result of the fire. So we're really thrilled that, I mean, it's a horrible reason to do it, but we're thrilled that we're able to be first in supporters for those communities that we love and that we work with to help them out of this terrible time of need. So that weekend, with those 2 days, a beautiful Saturday and a horrible Sunday, really, to me, has shown a lot of the things that Rotary does for communities. And yeah, so that's probably my recent experience, James.
Thank you, Caro. Louise, have you got something that you want to share around your Rotary moment?
Yeah, I think the first big project that I was involved in was a theatrical event called Convicts for a Cause. So that was a collaboration of 2 Rotary clubs and 2 charities working together to do an event at Fremantle Prison, where people registered as fundraising convicts and had to raise their bail to get out. And then we had a big cocktail party that was always based around a different dress-up theme, and we had a theatrical company who provided actors on the night who were mingling in the crowd, and there was a storyline that happened, and it was just so much fun. And we ended up, I think the last one we did was Wild West theme, and we raised $105,000, which was then split between the 2 Rotary clubs and the 2 charities. So we got to doing that every year. We raise money for diabetes research, cystic fibrosis. We got good money for our clubs, and it was just fun to create an event that people were excited about every year. And then since then, I've set up a new Rotary club over the last couple of years, and one of the things that we identify we were really passionate about in our club is reconciliation and the role that our club should play in that and what we might be able to do. So, and we knew what we didn't know, so we engaged Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal workshop facilitators to run a workshop for us, and we opened it up to other Rotary clubs, the wider community, and got a great response. And that's something we now run every year and promote to other Rotary clubs, our members, the general public. And it's just sort of a bit of a community service, I guess, that we provide to anyone that's interested to get information that they might not be able to find elsewhere. So yeah, that's been a proud project of ours in our club.
Wonderful. Does anyone else have any questions? There's been, what's your favourite Rotary project? I think we've kind of all, Caro and Louise and I have answered that. There's also a mention of Youth Exchange on the chat box. Does anyone else have anything more that they would like to ask? Sam asked the question, why have we stayed involved, or why have I stayed involved? Look, I think to a certain extent that impact on Exchange had it changed the direction of my life almost. So this is an organisation where I can see there's just so much potential to make a difference. And I guess where I get my buzz from is actually helping other people get an impact from Rotary as well. So, which is why I do what I do. So I think, it changes over time. But the Yeah, I think for now, the greatest value I can provide to Rotary and what gives me a real buzz is helping others experience Rotary. Penny has asked, can you explain a little bit more about Interact? Iniki, would you like to answer that question?
Hello, yes, I'd be happy to do that. Interact is basically a Rotary club that is in a high school. So it's with the high school students, and it is a partnership between the school and a local Rotary club. And so generally they'd have meetings once a week. They'd run projects themselves, things they're interested in. They could raise funds. They also learn a bit about running meetings and some of that governance aspect of things. So Interact works really well for the high school students. There's actually something called Early Act, which is a similar thing, which starts in primary school. And generally it starts with the children in years 5 and 6, the older ones. And again, it means that they have regular meetings. There's usually a teacher in the school or the principal who's keen to support it as well. They have their meetings generally around lunchtime type thing. And there's a lot of people in Rotaract who actually were in an Early Act club and then go to an Interact club. And then we have Rotaract, and Rotaract is for the 18 to 25 to 30-year-olds. So, but Interact works really well for the high school students. The schools love to have those clubs. We don't have a lot of those here in Western Australia, but I do know that there are clubs very interested in starting them. So I hope that helps.
Thanks, Iniki. That was fantastic. I'm just reading through. Another question is about leadership roles and club roles. So, and what benefit you get from it. Yeah, so I think the leadership, the opportunity for leadership is quite amazing. So I'm going to circle back to when I was at Rotary Crawley and I was the president there in around about 2013. There was no better leadership program. I was forced to public speak in front of a crowd of 50 or 60 people every single week. And not just public speak, but speak for 10 or 15 minutes. Managing people, managing personalities, older people, younger people. It was incredibly challenging for me at the time where I think I was 30 or I turned 30 during it. But it just accelerated my development as a leader, but also, I guess, as an influencer as well, having that type of experience. Now, that's a bit of an extreme example. Most presidencies aren't quite as intense as, in fact, running a club that's 100 members. I think it just about got to 100 members. And they were very, very active and a lot was happening. But there's other club roles like treasurer or secretary, and you learn the governance or you learn about numbers and accounting. There's membership-related roles where you engage with people and you learn about them and you become a better listener and, helper, essentially. And then there's people who predominantly run projects. So they get really good at coordinating things and learning how to pull different resources together and different suppliers and juggle lots of balls, or nothing. You can be someone who rocks up, participates in the projects and are entirely satisfied with that. It really depends on what you want your experience to look like. And as a Rotary Club, they know that it can change from time to time. One day you maybe want to be heavily involved in the leadership side of it. The next year you might just want to focus on projects. The next year after that you might be doing FIFO and only be able to be there half of the time. It's really, really flexible. Yeah, parents. So I think Louise has just added that a lot of parents who have children want to volunteer. There's a family-friendly club. So, Louise's club for a start, but a club setting up right now is pitched for people with very young families, and they meet at a community centre in City Beach, as well as other areas which are very child-friendly, and they do child activities. And I guess the intention is over time they're going to get their children involved in giving back, which is somewhat what I'm doing with my son. So I typically go to club projects, not only my own clubs, but other clubs projects where my son can be involved. He's 5 now, and to instill that value in him early is really important to me. Yeah, Kero talks about RILA in terms of a leadership program for younger people as well, 18 to 28-year-olds. Kero, is 28 a firm upper limit, or can you go older than that?
It's flexible. It is flexible. I mean, that we had a 29-year-old on RILA this year. It's the main aim with the thing is not to sort of go over the top and start having 40-year-olds getting involved in that sort of stuff, because it is intended really for that for young adults. And the ideal age, just out of interest for RILA, is about 22 or 23. Okay. 18 is not perfect.
Well, and I think having met a lot of people who've gone through RILA, it's at a time in their life where they can really benefit from the program that's being developed. So it's a great program, and it's an 8-day program, intensive, and they leave coming with a different perspective on life sometimes. So
yes,
RILA's quite an amazing program. Iniki has just added to the chat room, and this will be the final chat comment, but clubs help sponsor people to attend those leadership programs. Mostly sponsor. There's a small commitment that the participant needs to pay. Now, on that note, I'm going to just let you know that beyond tonight, I'm going to send you an email, which will have contact details, some upcoming events, and different ways to get involved. And sit on that, have a think about whether Rotary is the type of organisation that you wouldn't mind exploring a bit deeper. We can have a conversation, either email or on the phone, to understand what type of experience you're looking for. What are you really trying to get out of Rotary? And then I can certainly match you with a few experiences to try out. On that note, I want to thank you all for coming, and I hope your Rotary journey is a really good one, and we're here for you along the way. So thank you and good night.